Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Recently, we've been exploring different niches and subgenres within horror. And today, we are going to discuss one that is very often overlooked, erotic horror. What is erotic horror? How does it work? And how can you make it your own? Let's get into it. Erotic horror is a subgenre that blends sensuality with horror, and it has a really interesting niche, because it plays upon our most primal desires and our deepest fears at the same time. If you have ever experienced a sudden rush of adrenaline while watching a horror movie that caused you to both want to hide under the blanket and lean in closer to the screen at the same time, then you know what it's like to experience erotic horror. It's that feeling of desire to experience something terrifying, thrilling, and exciting, but also wanting to retreat from it at the same time. Sometimes erotic horror can border on the kinky or even the sexual, and it's not always scary things that turn us on. Sometimes it can be pain or humiliation as well. This is why some people enjoy scary rides like roller coasters, haunted houses, or even extreme sports. The feeling of being out of control and having to face your fears head on can be arousing for some, but for others, these feelings can push them over the edge. If you're interested in learning more about this niche or even incorporating it into your own work, then there are a few things that you should keep in mind. Let's get into it. Where did erotic horror come from? Erotic horror has been around since the beginning of storytelling itself. In ancient times, myths and legends were often used to scare young children into behaving properly, and these stories usually involved some sort of punishment for those who misbehave, which could range from anything as simple as being scolded by a parent to being eaten by a monster. These stories served as a warning to children, so they would be less likely to repeat whatever behavior that may anger the gods or other supernatural beings. As time went on, these stories evolved and became more complex. During the Victorian era, many authors began writing about the dangers of female sexuality. This was due to the belief that women's sexuality could be dangerous to men if it was not properly controlled. This led to the creation of many erotic horror stories that warned men about the consequences of giving in to their sexual urges. In the early 20th century, erotic horror began to be explored more fully by authors such as H.P. Lovecraft, who often wrote about the dangers of forbidden knowledge and the occult. As society's views on sex began to change in the late 20th century, erotic horror became more popular than ever. Today, erotic horror is a popular subgenre of horror that is enjoyed by many people around the world. Now let's talk about some of its most common themes. Obsession and compulsion. One of the most common themes in erotic horror is that of obsession and compulsion. This is often seen in stories where a character becomes fixated on someone or something to the point where it consumes their every waking moment. This can lead to some truly terrifying scenarios as the character becomes more and more unhinged. For example, in the film Black Swan, the main character is a ballerina who becomes obsessed with the idea of perfection. This obsession leads her down a dark path, where she begins to lose her sanity and her grip on reality. She becomes so consumed with her need to be perfect that she is willing to do anything, no matter how extreme or disturbing, to achieve her goal. Another example of obsession and compulsion in erotic horror can be seen in the novel Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. The main character, Humbert, is a middle-aged man who becomes obsessed with a young girl named Dolores Hayes. He becomes so fixated on her that he is willing to do anything to be with her, even though their relationship is completely inappropriate. The darker side of desire. Another common theme in erotic horror is the darker side of desire. This is often explored through stories about characters who have sexual urges that are considered taboo or unacceptable by society. For example, in the film Eyes Wide Shut, the main character has a seemingly insatiable desire for sex outside of his marriage. This desire leads him on a journey through the dark underbelly of sexual exploration, where he encounters all sorts of taboo and disturbing material. Similarly, in the novel The Silence of the Lambs, the main character, Clarice Starling, is a young FBI trainee who is tasked with interviewing a serial killer named Hannibal Lecter. As she spends time with Lecter, she becomes fascinated by him and his twisted psyche. She becomes so intrigued by him that she begins to develop romantic feelings for him, despite knowing that he is a brutal killer. Death and resurrection. A third common theme in erotic horror is that of death and resurrection. This is often seen in stories where a character is killed, but then brought back to life. This can lead to some truly terrifying situations, as the character must deal with the trauma of their experience while also trying to adjust to their new reality. For example, in the film Audition, the main character is a widower who is looking for a new wife. He meets a woman named Asami, who he believes is the perfect match for him. However, after he proposes to her, she reveals her true colors. It turns out that Asami is not who she appears to be, and she has a dark and twisted side that the main character is not prepared for. She is sadistic and enjoys inflicting pain on others. And she uses her sexuality as a weapon to manipulate and control those around her. So now that we understand some of the themes, let's explore how erotic horror can be portrayed through different mediums. Literature. When it comes to erotic horror in literature, there are so many classics to choose from. We've already mentioned a couple of them, such as Lolita and The Silence of the Lambs. But here are a few more. Dracula by Bram Stoker, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. These novels are all great examples of erotic horror, and they have stood the test of time for a reason. They are truly terrifying, and they explore the darker side of human nature. Film. Now, let's talk about film. There are so many amazing erotic horror films out there. A couple of personal favorites are Audition, Black Swan, and Eyes Wide Shut. But there are so many more to choose from. Some other classics include Rosemary's Baby, The Tenant, and The Wicker Man. These films are all truly disturbing, and they will leave you questioning everything. Art erotic horror can also be found in art. Many artists throughout history have explored the darker side of sexuality and desire in their work. Some of the most famous erotic horror artists include Francisco Goya, Edvard Munch, and Henry Dur. Their paintings are truly haunting, and they will stay with you long after you have seen them. So now, let's talk about how you can make erotic horror your own. Find your voice. When it comes to erotic horror, it is important to find your voice. What are you trying to say with your work? What do you want your audience to feel? Once you have found your voice, then you can really start to explore the genre. Don't be afraid to experiment. Erotic horror is all about exploring the darker side of human nature. So don't be afraid to experiment with your writing or art. Try to push the boundaries and see what you can come up with. Who knows? You might just create something truly terrifying and erotic. Focus on the psychological. Erotic horror is not just about gore and jump scares. It is also about the psychological aspects of fear. What is it that really scares us? What are our deepest desires and fears? By exploring these themes, you can create a truly disturbing and thought-provoking work of art. Embrace the grotesque. The grotesque is often used in erotic horror to represent the darker side of human nature. It can be used to shock and disturb the audience, but it can also be used to make a deeper statement about human psychology. Embrace the grotesque in your work and use it to explore the darker side of humanity. Most importantly, have fun with it! Erotic horror is a unique and exciting genre, so don't take it too seriously. Let your imagination run wild and see where it takes you. You just might create something truly special. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another video. Hopefully you learned something new and maybe even got inspired. Make sure to share this video with anyone who loves the darker side of things, and we will see you next time.